So, what are the possible injury claims that Denise Richards might have against her husband, Aaron Phypers, based on what she has put in her restraining order? All right. So, first of all, let's talk about what a restraining order is. So, they typically come in at least two parts. You file for a temporary restraining order, and you have to present some evidence that you might win your case, that you probably will. Then there's a hearing for a permanent restraining order. So the temporary has been filed and we're waiting on the permanent. Now let's look at some of the allegations. So Richards alleges that she was physically and emotionally abused for a period of at least 3 years. So she talks about things like being hit in the head, being kneed in the back, having her head slammed into objects. She says that this resulted in things like a black eye. She has a photo of that. At least 3 concussions. Now, based on this, she could file claims for negligent or intentional injury. And it might seem strange that you would say it was negligent, but that's a claim that she has. In either of these situations, she can ask to recover her medical bills, money for pain and suffering, lost earnings. Let's say if she missed work because she was unable to go to work for her injuries. And the types of evidence that she's going to need to present, obviously her own testimony, but also her medical records, photographs, witness statements if anyone else saw this happen. So another potential claim would be a claim for emotional distress. So you have intentional emotional distress and negligent infliction of emotional distress. Both of these could be available to her based on what she put there. So an emotional distress claim comes up when someone's conduct is so outrageous that they should know it's going to cause someone else emotional harm. So Richards talks about things like Phypers threatening her, saying he was going to disappear her, using his own suicide to manipulate her. All of these things could create an environment that caused her mental anguish, that made her mentally uncomfortable to be in, where she never knew what was going to happen next. So this could give rise to claims for negligent or intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, another type of claim that she could have is a battery. And this would seem to match up with the first claims for the injuring, but there's a little bit of a difference. Law school 101, battery is the unwanted contact of another without their consent, right? And that's important, is that there is no consent. This is why you don't have battery claims for boxers and MMA fighters, because they got in the ring and they consented. In this case, so you have a harmful or offensive contact, you have contact without Richard's consent, you do not need actual injury for a battery claim, there just has to be the contact. So based on what she has put in the temporary restraining order paperwork at least, Richards may have a claim for a battery. Another claim would be for the invasion of privacy. So Richards says that Phypers went into her computer, went into her bank accounts, went into maybe her email accounts or things like that. All of these things we have an expected privacy interest in, and you can sue someone for invading your privacy, right? So especially if Phypers uses this information in some way that harms Richard. So let's say he's gone into these email accounts, gone into these bank accounts. I think she alleges that he even recorded her in hotel rooms, right? So if he disseminates this information out there, well, first of all, just the act of going into it is an invasion of privacy. The injury comes up if he disseminates this information out into the public and it causes Richard some harm. And that harm could just be the embarrassment of whatever came out there. It could be loss of employment. It could be loss of employment opportunity, right? We're talking about celebrities here. Not sure it actually applies in this situation, but let's say there's a celebrity who has a sponsorship that they're making pretty good money on, right? And they lose it because of someone else disseminating information that they got by invading that person's privacy. That is something that Richards could sue to recover for. Another type of injury claim that she could have is for a trespass. So she alleges that Phypers went into her home, went into her digital devices. So you have a physical and a digital space trespass here. And both of those are actionable. And again, there doesn't have to be actual harm here. There just has to be the act of somebody else coming into your private space. Now, Phypers says that she is making all of this up. He might have a claim for defamation. If he can prove that these really are lies, that these things never happened, right? He can bring a claim against Richards for bringing these false allegations against him. But that's something he's going to have to prove. Now, Richards claims to have lots of evidence, photographs. She may have medical records. She may have witness statements. Phypers is going to have to prove that Richards is lying, because truth is an absolute defense to a defamation claim. So Phypers can bring that counterclaim, but he's going to have to show that Richards is actually making these things up. Because if they're true, even if some of them are true, then he is not going to do well in that defamation defense. So if Richards were to bring these claims, she could receive compensation in different ways. Obviously, there's money compensation. If she's incurred medical expenses, she can get her medical bills back. If she has loss of income, let's say she was scheduled to be on a set somewhere and couldn't go because she had a black eye. And I'm just making this up. I don't really know that that's the case, right? And she missed 2 or 3 days of work, or maybe lost out on a job. That is something she can recover for. Then the actual pain and suffering, the physical pain and suffering and the mental anguish have value. Now, it's not a value that you can really calculate like a science, but it's a value that a judge or a jury can decide based on the injuries that person suffered. So these are claims Richards could bring. Now, this case is set for a hearing in August. Remember, we talked about that there are 2 parts to a restraining order. You have the initial restraining order, where someone goes into court and says, look, judge, all these things are happening to me. I need you to issue an order putting stop to this right now. And lots of times judges will sign those just because they're not really sure of what's going on, and they would rather err on the side of protecting, especially if it's just trying to stop someone from invading someone else's privacy, hitting someone, things like that, right? So Richard has filed for the temporary restraining order. There's a hearing in August to see if that is going to be extended and possibly if it's going to become permanent. So at that hearing in August, we're going to expect to see a lot more of this evidence come out. And after that time, we'll have a better idea of what claims Richards may actually have and what defenses Phypers may have. So stay tuned. This is going to be very interesting. All right. If you enjoyed this episode, if you found it useful, remember to like and subscribe to our content. If you have questions about a personal injury case, if you have questions about how something might give rise to a personal case, make sure to email us at info@bigriverlaw.com.